Welcome to 4 Questions with an Engineer, the podcast where we explore the cutting-edge innovations shaping our world. Today, we're diving back into robotics. This year, 2 of the most anticipated events in the industry, the RoboBusiness event in California and the Humanoid Robotic Forum in Memphis, showcased groundbreaking technologies, from advanced automation to humanoid robots, redefining how we think about collaboration and design. Joining me today are 2 of CCTY's engineers who attended both events, Nick Jarnick and Yaman Obaid. They've seen firsthand how these innovations are transforming industries and have plenty of stories, insights, and even a few predictions to share about the future of robotics. So, whether you're an industry professional, a robotics enthusiast, or just curious about where technology is heading, stay tuned. This episode promises to be as insightful as it is inspiring. Let's get started. Nick and Yaman, tell us a little about what you saw and heard at this year's RoboBusiness and the Humanoid Robotic Forum.
What we saw in Memphis was, I really liked the speakers. We had a lot of companies come and talk about their robots, their progress. You know, we had 2 great speakers from 2 big humanoid companies, and they spoke about challenges they're facing. Where they're on the hardware, where they're on the software, what's the next big step. They talked about what's preventing them from implementing their robots into the market, and safety was a big thing. They said the thing holding them back basically is safety. They have to make sure the robot is safe, doesn't fall over, prepares for all the unexpected things that could happen, and knows, the robot knows how to handle that. How, like the different camera and vision systems for the robot, where they can see if there's a human and there's a box next to it, they know not to grab the human hand. They can differentiate between them. So we got to learn a lot of interesting things about robots outside of the hardware.
What were some of the more surprising takeaways from the educational sessions?
So every company had different opinions on how they want to move into the market. One company said we need dexterous hands. The other one said we do not need dexterous hands. It was really nice to see them speak one after the other. You would hear this company's perspective and their view of the future, and then you'd hear the other company and they're like, yeah, we just need the claws. We don't need dexterous hands. We can go with claws for 6 years, for like the next 6 years without dexterous hands. So you can see that the same environment, but they're working with different customers. Like some are working with different automotive companies, and maybe for each company they have a different view. So it was kind of interesting to see. One would say something, then the person right after would say something different, a different approach to solve the same issue. So that was pretty cool to see.
And building off of what Yaman was saying, depending on what the manufacturer is tackling, he was saying, the approach is going to be different, and you can see it in the actual design of the robot. One thing that was mentioned while in Memphis was just the design of the actuator. One actuator had over 50 different design iterations from what it initially was to where they currently are. And then in between each one of those iterations, you can see how different challenges and different goals that the company wants to achieve is going to affect the outcome of the humanoid.
Where do humanoid manufacturers tend to agree?
One thing they both agree, or 2 things they agreed on was the market, like timelines in a way, right? It's 2-3, it's not like something that's going to happen tomorrow, but they're going to start implementing soon, things into warehousing. They want to start with the warehouse because that's kind of the easiest, most repeatable task. Then they want to go into elder care, and then from there they want to go into houses, but houses kind of comes last.
They agree that there is a labor shortage within the United States, and they want to free up the mental capacity and the critical thinking that a human being can handle. So putting in robots into something like completing tasks that are dull, dangerous, or dirty would allow the human to basically focus on something that's a little bit more intellectual, something that requires more brain power and intelligence, leaving the hard labor work that would often basically create the human to go into a rut. Leave that to the robot, and it allows the human to focus on things that require more complex thinking.
It sounds like there's a ladder approach for adoption, beginning with simple tasks and then growing into more complex interactions. What do you mean by in-house?
Help you make your coffee, cook for you, do all that stuff, but that's last.
What kind of timeline is being projected as far as working alongside humanoids? Are we looking at 2 to 3 years or 5 years?
It's something like that. Well, what we do understand is one of the companies are basically going to release a fully commercialized humanoid robot for a warehouse application within the next 2 years. And the thing, like Yaman was saying, what they're dealing with right now is the whole safety protocol, because there aren't really standards that are set into place, similar to how when the industrial robot first came out, like those big arms, they have since they were released, there's been quite a lot of safety protocols and measures that are now necessary for those arms. Those don't exist for humanoids yet, so they need to basically come up with a way to do something similar like that for the humanoids, because one thing that they also mentioned was a variety of things that can go wrong. They're going to pick up a tote, but a human being is there. They cannot injure the human being, otherwise right away the robot cannot be implemented into a warehouse. So with that in mind, and the revisions that are going to come with the robot, there's a timeline of 18 to 24 months before a fully commercialized humanoid is to be released, and then within that timeline as well, there should be 2 more revisions. So I wouldn't be surprised if within 2 years you're seeing a more commercialized humanoid robot that's available for purchase. And on top of it, the way that they're going to approach this market, they also have 2 variations. One where you can basically do similar to what a SaaS is right now, sales as a service. They're going to have RAS, robot as a service. So they're basically renting out the robot for the time being, or allowing you to finance the robot or purchase it in general for you to use it. And then obviously the ROI on purchasing the robot is much quicker. Maybe the renting the robot would be able to, you can kind of see how it would work in your warehouse. So it's a trial with minimizing the risk of if something goes wrong.
Like forklifts, when you have like rent to own, you rent the forklift and then you would own it after a while. So similar, I mean, because most people,
And the software too, on that, renting the software as well.
Right, because the software, it's going to be like an iPhone where you can keep sending updates. So you can say like, okay, I'll add a sensor, send a software update, and then now you have an extra functionality or an extra sensor. Now there's already testing being done in automotive companies where the robots are basically doing tasks and learning, and it's more of like a development thing where now they're learning how is there any challenges facing the robot. But they could potentially release something soon and then release updates later, just like the iPhone 16 came out. And, they said there's going to be the smart Siri, AI integrated, but they haven't released that yet, even though they're selling the phone. So they could release part of the robot, can do simple things, and then give it software updates later where it enhances its functionality.
Similar to how Apple releases the phone, but then can release these software updates later, meaning that once these robots are commercialized and they're being used more and more on a day-to-day basis, they can pick up a lot more on that data. And once they have more information, one of the things that they like to talk about is not only do these robots need a lot of information, they need a lot of good quality information to be continuously improvable. So what they'll be able to do is every time that they do release a software update, they would be able to basically improve the robot without having to improve the hardware. They'll have to improve the hardware as well, but they won't have to do it as often when they can just find a way to better utilize the hardware.
Yeah, I like to think about this as like Tesla cars. They sell a lot of Teslas. They tend to be relatively. They have like usually good offers on Teslas just because they want more Teslas out there collecting more data so they can improve their self-driving technology. So the more robots out there, the more data you have, analyze and figure out if there are any challenges or if anything needs improvement.
They said something like that, but on top of it, they're expecting not only for robots to build robots, but to send these robots into space for space exploration, because what's lower risk, sending a robot with metal components, or having to design and spend millions of dollars on a spacesuit for a human being to go up there? Elon said something. I think it was going to be more humanoids than humans.
So he said this product or this concept of a multi-purpose humanoid robot will be the biggest product in the world. Like anything, like more than cars, more than anything you can ever imagine. So, and that's within probably the next maybe 10 years.
I think they said basically what could happen was the market value for humanoids could reach, I think was somewhere around $25 trillion. So it's quite a lot.
It's an exponential growth, and we can already see it. There's like more and more companies getting interested, and it's one observation I would say at the show is more like a community where everyone loves humanoid robots, and everyone's
They're obsessed with them too.
And everyone's like defending the robots. When we had multiple speakers in Memphis where they would say like, this is my grandma, like a story about my grandma and how she struggled, and only if there was a humanoid that would be next to her and help her out. So there's a lot of like heartfelt stories that were told, and it all makes sense. And then there was another speaker that brought statistics and talked about literally like specific numbers, how humanoid robots will increase the job market and it will basically open up more jobs than, and it made sense to me at least, when I heard that when I was in that session. So it was like a community where everyone's like, yeah, we need to create a committee, we need to get the government involved, we need some like not just funding from the government, just like support to, we want to know that they see our purpose, they see that we're working towards something that will improve everyone's life.
Referencing back to that race that I was talking about, because it's between China and the United States. The Chinese government is currently spending a significant amount of money to fund these companies, and it's one of the insights I can also provide is when I was at the show in Beijing, there was many more humanoid manufacturers than what we see in not only in the United States but North America. It's also very similar to what it's going to see. It's going to be a huge funnel, and it's going to be very, 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 very few. I'd say over 99% of the companies that exist within the humanoid industry are going to fail. There's only going to be maybe, I'm not going to say a number, but it's going to be a much, much smaller number than the amount of companies that are approaching the market right now.
Nick, you also attended a show in Beijing this year. What stood out to you at that event?
Mainly the amount of companies that exist that are trying to tackle the problem, or I guess not the problem, they're trying to take on the industry and become a leader in the industry. In the United States, or actually North America in general, when you think about humanoid robots, if you're invested in it, there's about 6 companies that come to mind. In China, there was many more. I'd say maybe 3, 4, or 5 times the amount.
How does the technology in Chinese robots compare to what you see at US-based trade shows?
A humanoid without processing power, like an AI or an LLM, is nothing more than a metal box. It's supposed to house the AI, and that's what a lot of these companies are approaching this as. They're looking at it as the embodiment of artificial intelligence. I don't know if that's going to change in terms of the type of intelligence that's used in robots, but regardless, you need to have a strong AI model that's going to power these robots and do the tasks that you want in not only an efficient manner, but in a way that's appealing to the human eye. Robots that I saw in China are very different because of that AI model, and I'd say it's also part of the reason that it looks like they're kind of behind. Some of the humanoid manufacturers that I saw over there are still controlling the robots with a remote control, so it's not like it's an AI model. I did see that there were some that were teleoperated, which was similar to what Tesla and a majority of these companies do. But the thing is, the biggest and the most advanced humanoid manufacturers in the United States, I would say, are much farther ahead in the AI model, which is what controls the robot, and what it realistically is going to be what allocates the robot to be implemented by human beings. If you can't control it on itself, like going back to the safety feature, if you're not able to do this in a controlled and safe manner, you'll never be able to put this around people. And you can't cage a robot like you can with an industrial arm. You can't cage a humanoid robot like you can with an industrial arm.
In China, I don't know if there's different companies making like different parts of the robot. What we see here in North America is that most of the bigger companies, they tend to want to control as much of the process as possible, as much of the of the components. Like only something that's very difficult to make, it would need its own manufacturing facility, then they would source. Anything like their everything that they can produce themselves, they will. Like actuators, they would source some parts of the actuator, but then they would customize everything in-house. In China, they are making full humanoids, and their robots, and I believe I read that they're open source, which maybe is making things easier for other smaller companies to kind of replicate the design or come up with a hardware that, as Nick was saying, to embody the AI that will somehow be developed later.
Why do you think the manufacturers are focused on fully integrating the production? Is it because of the secrecy around individual designs?
Part of the reason could be secrecy for sure. They don't want anyone knowing what their design is. If you're making just part of the component of a certain component, then you don't know the whole design, and it kind of makes sense. Just seeing how everyone's being secretive about any information given out, even suppliers. And then another reason could be just to safeguard the process, just like we have many processes in-house in our factory. We do that to control the entire process for quality, to control the process for so we don't have any delays. If we have to rush something, then we just do it, right, because it's in-house. So and again, it comes back to being a race. This is a race between companies, between countries. When it comes to needing something quick, it would be much easier to rush it if it's in-house.
When attendees stopped by the booth, what products were of interest to them?
The products that, when you think of a humanoid, there's like certain products that come to mind. First, you have the cross roller bearing and the flexible ball bearings, which are parts of the rotary actuators. And then you have rod ends, right? And then you have SPBs, spherical plane bearings, for linear actuator ends. And then you have other linkages. And then you have bushings for the hands. And people are interested to see how small our products were. And they'll be like, wow, this is tiny. And you'd be like, yeah, well, this goes in this part of the robot, this goes in different part. So it was pretty cool. Some people came just to see bearings in general, mechanical engineers, or they just like the concept of learning more about where our products go. Why are we in a humanoid show? Some people, if they don't know that bearings are in rotary actuators or linear actuators, they'd be like, oh, what brings you to the show? And we'd be like, yeah, well, our products go in many parts of the robot, and they are actually they're key to success in many of those products, actuators and other parts.
And while we went beyond our typical number of questions, that wraps up today's episode of 4 Questions with an Engineer. A huge thank you to our guests for sharing their experiences and takeaways from the RoboBusiness event and the Humanoid Robotic Forum. It's clear that the robotics industry is evolving at an incredible pace. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming episodes. And as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Connect with us on social media or send us an email at info@cctygroup-us.com. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep innovating.